It was Christmas time in 1995 or 1996 at my aunt's house on a reservation in North Dakota. Some of my family was in the living room watching TV. The kids were playing in the rooms or sleeping, and my uncle, aunt, and I were sitting at a table, putting a puzzle together. My cousin, who worked at a casino, would come home around midnight or 1 a.m. This night, as she pulled up and was walking towards the house, she looked in the window and saw me sitting at the table, my uncle sitting across from me, someone standing to the left of me, and someone standing in the corner. So she continued to walk into the house, thinking nothing of it. When she got in and said her hellos, she put her stuff away and came back to join us at the table. As we were sitting there talking, she looked at me and asked who was standing next to me a few minutes ago, and who was in the corner. I told her no one. And she said, "Yeah, there was someone standing next to you. It looked like your mom, and she was playing with your hair." I have long hair, which I used to wear down all the time. She said this person was running her hands on my hair, like a mother does to a child. It kind of freaked me out, being I was probably only 12 or 13 at the time. My cousin swears up and down that someone was standing over me, rubbing my head and watching me put the puzzle together with my aunt and uncle. And that there was another person standing behind this person. We got around to thinking it was probably her mom she saw, who passed away on her birthday about a week from Christmas back in 1992. In my family, we consider our aunts and uncles to be just like our moms and dads. After thinking that it could have been her, it didn't scare me so much. However, we couldn't figure out who the other person was, the one who was standing in the corner. And always around Christmas time, something strange happens. And we just think that it's her visiting us. I had an unusual visitor on Christmas Day in 2008, and I'm pretty sure it wasn't Santa Claus passing by my house in Indiana. The day started in a typical fashion with the opening of gifts around the Christmas tree. I served an early Christmas dinner for my family and friends, and everyone departed by about 5 p.m., except for my sister and brother-in-law who live with me. They were sleeping in a bedroom at the end of the hall with the door open. I went into my bedroom with my dog, Toby, and shut the door securely. Toby curled up at the foot of my bed, like always. It was chilly, so I pulled the blankets and comforter up around my head and curled up for a nap. I was just dozing off when I heard the latch on my bedroom door open. I waited several seconds for my brother-in-law or sister to ask me whatever they wanted to ask, but there was no other sound. It was almost 7 p.m., so my bedroom was pitch black. I had left lights on in the kitchen and the bathroom, and there were lots of Christmas lights in the living room, so the hallway would have been well lit. I would be able to see whoever was at my door just by lifting my head. I pushed the blankets down, lifted my head from my pillow, but just as I would have been able to see who was in the doorway, an extremely bright light hit me right in the eyes. I shielded myself and yelled, "Turn out that damn light! You're blinding me!" The light immediately disappeared, and I heard my bedroom door latch closed. My bedside light is a touch lamp, so I tapped it on and looked around my room. But there was no one there except for me and Toby. Toby jumped off my bed and went to the door without showing any signs of alarm. At first, I wasn't frightened because Toby's a Dutch Shepherd, well-trained and an excellent watchdog, and proven personal protection dog. Since Toby was already up, I decided to let him outside to see what sis or brother-in-law needed. When I went into the hallway, I could see both of them were still in the bed. I took Toby to the living room to let him outside, and there was no one there either. So who opened my bedroom door and turned a spotlight on my face? Ordinarily, I'm not a skittish person. and strange noises or lights wouldn't really alarm me, but this situation was just too eerie. And that light had made my skin crawl. Let me add that the latch on my bedroom door is broken in such a way that the inside door handle must be jiggled for the latch to pop out and engage. It makes a very distinctive sound that I'm used to listening for because if it doesn't latch, the door just swings open. I am absolutely positive that the door was latched closed when I got into bed, just as I'm certain it was the door latch I heard during this incident. When I left the bedroom, the door was latched closed again. I couldn't understand how my sister or brother-in-law could have come into my room and then returned to their own bed, crawled under the covers in just a few seconds. But I figured it had to be one of them since Toby always barks and growls at everybody and everything that he doesn't immediately recognize. When my brother-in-law got up to get ready for work that night, I asked him what he wanted earlier in the evening when he opened my door. He looked puzzled and then said, "I never got up, and I certainly never opened your door." I slept soundly the whole time I was in bed. Okay, I then asked my sister, "Did you want something earlier this evening when you opened my door?" She also looked puzzled and said, "I dozed off and on. I never got out of bed. And I never saw or heard anything in the hallway." She leaves their bedroom door open all the time, and she faces the hallway so she can see whoever is coming and going throughout the house. So, who was my special Christmas visitor? And how did they get in and out so quickly? Like most people, the thoughts of loved ones are always close at hand during the holiday season. When I first went to lie down, I was thinking how happy I was that my small family had enjoyed a pleasant Christmas. But it would have been so much better if my mother and brother had still been alive to share it with us. I would like to think that it was my brother's spirit stopping by to say Merry Christmas. I still think of you too. I haven't been able to debunk this strange event or find any kind of rational explanation. I'm half afraid that my heart stopped during my sleep and the light I saw was the bright light people report after near-death experiences. Leave it to me to see the stairway to heaven and ruin my chance at eternal paradise by saying, "Turn out the damn light." I made a mental note that if I ever see that bright light again, to clean up my language. Just in case. My mother, to whom I was very close to, passed away in 1964 when I was just 17 years old. I left home that year and moved to Ontario from Nova Scotia. In 1969, I met a girl who I'll call Karen, and we got married in March of 1970. In December of 1971, we were expecting our first child. We were living in a small 1.5 bedroom bungalow. There was a fireplace in the living room. My wife and I loved the fireplace, and we had it lit just about every night. It was Christmas Eve 1971, and we just finished putting gifts under the tree. And the fire gave a nice, beautiful glow. On the tree, one string of lights, which was supposed to flash, had stopped several days before. It was 5 minutes until midnight when the fireplace suddenly just went out, and the string of lights started to flash. And the other lights stopped flashing. My wife and I were sitting on the floor, and it had become very chilly in the room. I looked over in the lazy boy chair, and there was a figure sitting there. My mom, with a beautiful smile on her face. My wife, who had never met my mother, said that she could see the same thing. This ghost never spoke, but just kept looking at me and my wife, smiling. At 12 midnight, the fire in the fireplace started up again, The lights on the tree stopped flashing and others started again. I looked over at the chair and the ghost was gone. No matter what I did, those Christmas lights never flashed again. My parents and I lived in a small home that was around 90 years old. It was in a small town in northeast Indiana. The year would have been 1996. We lived there from the time I was 7 years old until the time I was 19. From the very day that we moved in, I felt that I was not alone. At night, I would lie in bed with the intense feeling that I was being watched. One year, around Christmas time, I was having a friend spend the night. The heat had just shut off briefly, and she and I were sitting in the living room watching television when the temperature dropped substantially. I rose up to turn the heat on. The Christmas tree began to shake violently. Ornaments were falling off right and left, and she and I were terrified. We ran upstairs to lay down on my bed. My white cat curled up with us, and my door opened slightly. When I gazed out to the dark hallway, I was horrified to see a tall white figure run down the hall. I turned to my friend, and she acknowledged that she had seen the exact same thing. She never spent the night ever again. Years passed, and things were uneventful. I became severely ill with a chronic illness and was frequently hospitalized. That's when things began again. After coming near death twice, I began to be able to see and sense things that no one else could. I, once again, felt that nagging sensation of being watched. I ignored it this time, and the illness went into remission. Once again, the activity, if you can call it that, stopped. When I was 18, I began to experience things like never before. Upon the death of my grandfather, I had become preoccupied with death and frequently visited cemeteries. That's when I noticed an increased activity. It started out with the voices. It was like a television that had been turned on, and there was a flurry of voices coming from downstairs, or even more frightening, from outside my room. My parents were always asleep when this would happen, and their room was right next to mine, with a vent, so I can hear my parents sleeping next door. I would get up and check all the rooms, and there was no TV on. Nothing to account for the voices. I was getting more and more scared as the voices started happening every night. And that's when I started seeing shadow figures. They varied in size, but were always human-shaped, except for one. One night I was walking out of my room with my cat in my arms, and she began to growl. She never does this. She's normally an extremely docile cat, and I was shocked to see her acting like this. That's when I looked down the hall and saw a shadow, the size of a large dog, run up the hallway. We don't own a dog. We owned one before I became ill, but we were forced to give it away due to the fact that I could no longer provide for it. My cat growled and growled until the shadow disappeared. For all the other times that I saw shadow figures, they never took the form of a dog again. From that point, the shadow figures were strictly human-shaped, some tall, some child-sized, but frightened me to death. I would lie in my bed at night, tortured by the fear that I was going to go insane because no one else was experiencing this. When I confessed my experiences to my parents, they took me to a psychiatrist who could find nothing wrong with me. I continued seeing these shadow figures until the last few months that we lived there. As the months went on, I began feeling a dark aurora spreading around the place. It was a heaviness and uncomfortable feeling that I could never quite shake. Sometimes I would get frustrated with whatever was there. I would leave a room and I would turn off the light, and the light switch would make an audible click every time someone turned it on or off. Every time I would shut off, the click would echo, and I would turn around and the light would be back on. Finally, I said in an annoyed voice, Quit playing games. Would you shut off the light, please? And sure enough, right before my eyes, the light would shut off. In August 2008, we moved to my new house, which is farther from the old one. I haven't experienced anything abnormal, and the aurora is much lighter. Perhaps it was my dabbling in the paranormal that caused all that grief in that house, but one night I went back to get some of my things, and as I was leaving, I saw a dark figure run across the yard. I drove away and never looked back. On Christmas Eve night, 1978, at about 3 a.m. in Oregon, I was suddenly awakened by a choir singing. The house was a new construction and miles from the nearest church. I strained to hear any words that I could understand or a tune that I could identify, but I could not understand the language or tune. I was getting a feeling of angelic reverence and gladness of heart. This was truly a heavenly choir lifting their voices on high, singing Hosanna in the highest, in an unknown tongue, without any accompaniment of instruments. I examined the television, but it was off, as was the radio. I explored outside, but the singing wasn't heard outside. The way the courtless male, female, and children voices intertwined with each other, the tonals going from operatic highs to the deepest bass low, in perfect harmony. It lasted about 10 minutes, but it was touching for an eternity. I hope you ghouls enjoyed these creepy Christmas stories. I mean, a lot of them were really sweet. They weren't really creepy. And, it's on par with the season. I hope all of you are having a really good Christmas or, whatever holiday you celebrate in the winter time. I just hope you guys are having a good time, being merry, chilling out with family. Maybe you got, the present you wanted. I just really hope that you ghouls are happy, especially around this time of year. But as always, ghouls, the last video will be on the top left. The next video will be on the bottom left. All my social medias are on the screen as well as in the description box below. And remember, there's always someone or something watching you.